Hello, my fellow readers of Dark Symphony 777 with part 2 of the Paper Mario tier list. So last time I did chapters, and this time I'm going to do bosses. So what makes a good boss? A good boss is basically one that's designed well, is difficult for that point of the area. You want to fight it, whether it be optional or a super boss. So everyone has a different definition of what constitutes a good boss. And those are mine. Are they designed well? Do they have good gimmicks? If they're used properly, how dangerous they are in like a casual setting? Because most like gimmick builds especially in Paper Mario, some of the bosses turn into an absolute joke, and some of them actually become more threatening. So this list will be based off how tough they are in a casual setting. Let me actually delete that because I remember all these bosses. Also, since you fight some of the bosses multiple times, I will count only one as as an actual boss. So I'm not going to count all the Junior Trooper fights. I'm not going to count the triple anti-guy, but I will count the regular anti-guy. And we'll go over them. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notification, and give me your thoughts on where would you put some of these bosses. Like, were there any that you would want to see here? Any of these you would not want in a place? So we're actually going to start from the very beginning. We're going to start with the Koopa Brothers. Now, the Koopa Brothers are basically what I consider the bog standard boss, like a poster child of what Paper Mario boss should do. I put them in B tier. Their main gimmick is they technically have two phases. One is they use a crappy paper mache Bowser, and the other one is they kind of stack on top of each other, and they basically hit you for some damage if they're stacked on top of each other. More turtles on top, the more the turtles are on top of each other, the more damage they stack up. The main problem is, even for that point in the game, they're way too easy. Mainly because the Koopa Brothers only have 5 HP each, which is almost as much as a regular Koopa Brother. Like, Koopas and Paratroopas in this chapter only have like 4 HP. So having 1 HP more doesn't really make them threatening. I get the whole point that the Koopa Brothers are supposed to be a joke character. Like, their whole stick is they basically bit off more than they can chew. So that at least makes them interesting in the fact that they're just basically blowhards, but doesn't really make them any harder or make them like even interesting. They're entertaining characters. If I rank them by their character, they'd probably be S tier. They're hilarious. They're frankly just a bunch of schmucks who kind of thought they could match up against Mario. Next, let's continue. Next up is crap. I actually forgot this guy's name. He's the bird you fight in the Mount Rugged area. He gets a C. I do like the setup that he just doesn't know what Mario looks like, and you basically have the option of answering him. If he asks who you are, you either Mario, Luigi, or Peach. And if you're like Luigi or Peach, he's like, nah, it's problem nothing, and leaves. And he doesn't really have that much HP. He only has about 30 HP, I believe he has. I can't remember. I actually cannot remember. Let's actually look that up right now. Mario. Yeah. Let's actually look that up. A Bazaar. There we go. Yeah, he has 40 HP. He has 40 HP. He's not really that threatening. Like, he's supposed to be a mini-boss. He's very optional. You don't have to fight him. But even at that point in the time, just like the Koopa Brothers, he's very easy. Like, the first 2 bosses are just pathetically easy. He's slightly harder. He's actually harder than the Tootin' Koopa. But overall, he's not a bad design boss. I wouldn't put him bottom barrel. He has some neat tricks. He throws his quills at you. He can blow you up and make you dizzy. I think he's the first boss that can introduce the fact that your partners can get hit in the game. Because up until that point, your your partners are pretty much safe. I know I believe the Monty-Moles can actually do that as well, but they don't really do it that often. But I believe Bizarre is the first one to actually show that off. And then we have Toot and Koopa. He's the first damn squid. He's just completely pathetic. He has only about 30 HP. I believe actually 30 or 20. He doesn't really have a lot of HP. Let's actually... Yeah, 30. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he only has 30 HP. He's not really... He's just... At that point in the time in the game, you fought in much harder enemies. Much hardier enemies. He's not really that threatening. He has like a shtick where he kind of tries to spook you. And he's just completely underwhelming. He's really just there. He throws some shells at you and can summon a Chain Chomp every once in a while. I mean, the Chain Chomps are more threatening to him. That's like the hardest thing about him. But if you have like certain badges, he does nothing. Like he's barely a threat to the player. Like he's not really dangerous. So we're gonna go back and not the Duner Trooper. Back. I'm not gonna count the Koopa brothers or the Goomba King. I'm not counting those two. Mainly because you're automatically have to fight them. You're always guaranteed to win. Same thing with the Magic Koopa. Just go with that. And we move on to Tele-Blob. Tele-Blob is interesting because you have the heart in him. I'm just gonna put him up here. The heart boss fight only has like 2 attacks. He basically bumps into you and he can do a charge attack. Problem is, both those moves do nothing. He does have 4 attack points, so he does a lot of damage, and the heart does have 40 HP, so he is pretty chunky. The main issue is, once you get him, you don't even defeat him. You just get him down low enough and he runs away. And then you get to Tele-Blob, who actually does who can do some damage, except for the fact he only has 10 HP. Like, he's nothing. He's a pushover. I get that Forever Forest and the whole thing is supposed to be more story-driven, because it gives us, again, the whole story behind Tele-Blob being very depressed and only working for Bowser because of the booze. Specifically, Lady Bow basically bullied him into doing it. So he's not really a tough guy. He's just he's just someone who's got to retaliate against his bullies. Nothing too bad. But at least he has a good enough build-up with him being invincible at first. Better than Toot and Koopa, I would say. Then we have the bosses of Shy Guy's Toy Box. We actually have... First off, let's get rid of the Lantern Ghost. Lantern Ghost is okay. I don't think he's bad. He only has about 30 HP, I believe. 20 or 30. Like I said, I can't remember. And I like the gimmick of having to actually hit the lantern, i.e. you gotta hit what, in order to actually do damage. And him constantly blowing out, wasting a turn to blow up the lantern. Bow is your friend in this fight. You're going to use Bow for this fight because she's the one that can just simply light up the lantern the easiest with her slap being multi-hit. And that can make the fight trivial, which is why it's deep. But if you don't use Bow, the boss is actually pretty hard. Like, he's not the hardest boss. Like, there are harder bosses than him. But if you don't use Bow, then he can actually be at least a little challenging. Anti-Guy. Anti-Guy is an A rank. He's basically a super boss. Like, there's nothing wrong with the super boss. Paper Mario has 3. Him, the Master, and Kent C. Koopa. Although I don't have no idea what Kent C. Koopa is like even doing in this game. I really don't know. Anti-Guy basically guards a chest inside into Shy Guy's Toy Box. You can fight him or you can bribe him with lemon drops to just make him leave. So you don't actually have to fight him to get the item. He has 50 HP. I believe he has no defense, and he does about 12 damage for an attack. He's really tough, and you need to be either as high a level or you need to have a specific build in order to actually beat him at low level, or you need to abuse Bow's out-of-sight ability. We'll talk more about the out-of-sight ability later, because let's just say out-of-sight is just frankly ridiculous, and if you want to do like any challenge build, you're going to be using Bow a lot. But yeah, so yeah, Anti-Guy goes in the A rank. And so we have General Guy. He goes right next to Anti-Guy, right at the beginning of A. His gimmick is he rides a tank, and it's a gank fight because you gotta actually fight some waves of Shy Guys. You gotta fight a Shy Guy crowd, then you gotta fight some Silk Guys, and then you gotta fight Shy Guy stacks. And then you can get to General Guy. He's pretty much a pushover once you get past that because he only has 2 attacks. He has the Light Bulb, which you can actually negate by destroying it. And then you just basically have General Guy. And Watt is going to take advantage of that a lot. If it wasn't for the fact that Watt's normal attack can pierce dim defense, he would probably be S rank. But since Watt makes this fight kind of a joke, it prevents him from becoming S tier. Like, General Guy's a really well designed boss. He only has 2 attacks, but he makes those attacks work by being incredibly tough and him being like the first actual boss to have like decent stats for the time. He has like 40 HP. He has 2 defense, I believe, either a defense or 2, and both attacks can do a lot of damage. So let's get the blooper fights out of the way next. All three blooper fights kind of play similarly, so I'm only gonna do one. The blooper fights across the board are okay. Like, they're really just inconvenient bosses. They're padding. You fight a regular blooper first. He doesn't really have a lot of health. Then you have the electro blooper, which has 30 HP, and then you have the super blooper, which has 60 HP. Super blooper is probably the hardest one because he can turn it into a gank fight by spawning 2 baby bloopers that do some damage, and can ink you and can make you and just basically can status you with like poison effects. He's not a hard boss, especially once you actually get a chance to fight him. Like, you're sufficiently leveled up enough that you can just curb stomp him. But if you underestimate him, he can kill you. He can actually completely pretty much curb stomp you back if you're not prepared for him. Electro Blooper is kind of hard because he can electrify himself, so unless you have the Zap Tap badge or some way to electrify yourself, like with Watt, you're pretty much going to have to defend a turn or do some other way of attacking. Because if you attack him when he's electrified, you're going to get hurt back. Like, you're not even going to do damage, you're just going to hurt yourself. And it's alright. Like, he's not bad. Like, the overall package is, they're really there for padding. And that's it. Let's see. Fuzzy P, this thing's a joke. Like, just like Koopa, this thing's just a plain old joke. It's been so long, I actually don't even remember what he does. He only has like 20 HP. He's pretty much in a whale, just making it sick. The main problem is, even when I was a kid, I beat him way too fast, so I could never remember what he did. He stays on the ceiling of the arena, so you have to use Watt to get him. Either Watt or Bow, I can't remember. Or Paracarry, because Paracarry can hit him up there too. Other than that, I just don't know. I can't remember what he does because I just always beat him so fast. Even when the first time I fought him when I was a kid, I knew nothing about the battle system, like how deep the battle system of Paper Mario is. I beat him like so fast. I just could never figure out what he does. So he gets an F. Who's next? Actually, it would be the Lava Piranha. Lava Piranha is the first S tier boss in this tier list. He is a phenomenally designed boss. It's technically a gang fight because he's based off the Naval Piranha in Yoshi's Island, except fire instead of water. He actually has 2 phases. I love the neat little trick that when you beat him the first time, he basically does all the knockout animation stuff like that when you beat a boss. And then he goes in the lava, it gives you star points, and actually goes through the ending fight animation, like with Mario wagging his finger, or Mario touching up his hat, and then you see the shot, then you see the shaking, and then he comes back out of the lava, pissed off and on fire. And I love that neat little touch. Even when I was a kid, I thought that was freaking amazing, because when I first beat him, first beat the first phase, like, I didn't get that many star points. I'm like, that's not really a lot of star points for this point in the game. And then he comes back and you get like a lot of star points. He has total HP like 80 HP because he has 40 HP each. He's a really well designed boss. I like the fact The little touch is to encourage you to use Sushi because when he's on fire, he takes more damage from ice attacks as well as Sushi, specifically her Water Shot and Tidal Wave. If you have, you're probably not going to have Tidal Wave at that point because you're going to be stuck on Lava Lava Island. But if you manage to power up Sushi, it needs you have Tidal Wave. That would help out immensely against Lava Piranha. He's just a phenomenal boss. He has a lot of moves. He can basically light you on fire. He can summon some orbs, even create more enemies when he's on fire. He just has a lot to offer. Next boss is Lackluster. Another F tier. He's just complete garbage. I don't like Lackluster. I don't like this guy. I don't particularly hate, I hate him as a character. I hate him as a partner. Because he's literally the worst partner in Paper Mario because he's literally just there. And everyone does everything better than he does. I'll go more about that in the partner tier list. He doesn't really have a lot to offer. He just throws spinies at you. And that's it. It's kind of garbage. But but I have nothing good to say about this guy. Well, let's just move on. Huff and Tough. Huff and Tough's A tier rank. I like the fact that he's like one of the few bosses in both games that's actually built up because he completely destroyed Flower Field with pollution, and you only fight him once you clear up all the pollution and you basically have no choice but him left. He does have a neat gimmick that every time you hit him, he does spawn a little Huff and Tough that he can absorb to heal, encouraging you to try and get rid of the Huff and Tough as fast as possible. So using stuff like Hurricane or Tidal Wave or Tornado Shoes, if you have them, to basically do as much damage as you can to the small ones as well as him. So you keep whittling down his health. He has 70 health in the game, but it seems like more because he constantly heals himself. So it becomes very, very tedious. It becomes a very, very well thought out DPS test of you constantly whittling down his health while also trying to keep him from healing himself. It's a really well thought out battle. It is once you figure out what to do, he kind of becomes not exactly that hard because he always wastes a turn to heal. And once you actually know how to set up and stuff like that, he's one of those bosses that becomes an immediate joke. Yeah, his little clouds can actually attack you too, but if you know how to command dodge, command block, then he's just really easy. He just becomes just shy of I'll put him at the top of A rank. Next we have Monstar. He's an F tier, but no, he's an E tier because he's purposely meant to be bad. Storyline, he's meant to be threatening because it's just a bunch of Star Kids trying to scare people away, so that way they don't get kidnapped like the Star Spirits did, which is the only reason why I'm not putting him in F rank, because he's purposely meant to be bad, just like the Koopa Brothers. But the thing is, Koopa Brothers are bad from a gameplay perspective, but good theming wise, and Monstar is the same reason. It just does not work as well as the Koopa Brothers. He only has one attack that does 1 damage. He has 25 health. And he's just really there just storyline purposes. It's fine. Crystal King, another S tier rank. Crystal King is flat out amazing. You know what? I'm gonna pop him down to A tier because now. Yeah, put him on bottom of S tier. There's just the problem with Crystal King is there's just nothing about him. He just shows up, he dies, and that's it. It's kind of sad because I actually would have liked to learn more about the Crystal King, which is pretty cool. He is pretty threatening. He has 70 HP. He has 2 defense. He has 3 phases because he does heal himself. So at total, he has 110 HP. If you let him heal, because his healing abilities are at a set timer, so you can actually glitch him that if you manage to get past those timers, he can't heal. It's very hard to do, but if you know when he heals himself, then you can easily just bypass it. He summons 3 gems. He can clone himself. He can do a lot of damage. All of his moves do freezing damage, which prevent you from acting, which is a really devastating status effect in Paper Mario 1. But overall, and he's just really well designed. I actually like the overall design, like he's aesthetically pleasing. He's very threatening because he takes this job seriously. Like the rest of them are just either they're kind of jokes, like the Koopa brothers, Toot and Koopa, or General Guy. They're wild, or like Lava Piranha, a wild animal. Huff and Tuff's tech only really holding it because but only really holding it because he works for Bowser, but doesn't really, but mostly he's just on his own. And then you have Crystal King, who's just completely loyal to Bowser for completely unknown reasons. So yeah, let's see. So before we get to Bowser, let's get the other two optional bosses out of the way. Kenshi Koopa. I have no idea why he's here, but he's competently designed. He's not really that hard once you know what to do. Honestly, he's actually very hard. It's just, I just never understood the purpose of why he was in the game. Like, it's just very weird. Let me look up Kenshi Koopa. Kenshi Koopa. Like, why is he even here? He has 1-5 optional bosses of the game. He's just, I really don't really know why he's here. Like, he has 70 HP, he has 10 attack power, he is a super boss. I just never understood the fact of why he was put in the game. All the other, like, the Master, he's fine. Like, but you're given an invitation to, like, fight him. But with Kenshi Koopa, he's like, you fight him in the path to the Koopa Brothers Fortress. He's just there. I never understood that. He is really competently designed. If you have Bao and you know what to do, he just gets completely destroyed because Bao can just wipe out his HP like nobody's business. And he's completely susceptible to sleep status, but other than that, he's fine. I just really wonder why he was there. And then we have the Master. Yeah, put him in S tier. He's a really well-designed boss. He has 90 HP. His third form has 99 HP. It's tied with Bowser for the most HP in the game, most based HP. He has multiple attacks. You don't know what he's going to do. His timing is very hard to predict. His final fight does have a defense. You don't really get much of a reward for him. You just get a diploma saying, hey, you beat me. Now, you're the strongest of the dojo. But overall, he's fine. Like, he's a really great boss. He's more simplistic than Kenshi Koopa, but at least you know what you're doing with him. And you don't really suffer a game over when you beat Master. It's mostly just a spar when you fight him. He's very well designed, and I actually really love it. I love the idea of the ultimate super boss of the game being a old man Toad, who just turns into Mr. Miyagi and just kicks your shit and basically kicks your teeth in. He's really well designed. I love him. And then we have let's get Junior Trooper out of the way. Junior Trooper. His quality really depends on which phase, because you fight him a total of once at the beginning in the prologue, once after you beat the Koopa Brothers, once in the Forever Forest, once after the events of Lava Lava Island. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Once in Shiver City, which is 5, and then the Koopa. Let's see, 1. Wait, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 times. You fight him 6 times in the game. And the quality of these fights kind of vary from the boss fight to boss fight. But for the ultimate boss fight, I would put him in B tier. I love the fact you do get a recurring villain, like a recurring antagonist. He's basically just a little bully that Mario beat the shit out of, and he's just kind of grumpy that Mario kind of knocked him down a peg. It's like, I will beat you, Mario! Loses. I will beat you later, Mario! And he comes back later, constantly getting humiliated and stuff like that. He's overall decent boss. Like there are some better than others. But he is a nice example of a progression boss. He just shows up way too much. I guess that's the whole point. He's supposed to be like very determined. But even then, it kind of got annoying because at the end, when you think you're about to fight the Koopa brothers because they actually show up in Bowser's castle, Junior Trooper shows up and basically wipes the floor with them, and they said, "I'm gonna fight you one more time." And I literally act just like, "Oh, not this idiot again!" Like I just stop it. I wanted to fight the Koopa brothers. He's okay. Then we have Bowser. He has an A rank. Bowser's basically... Let me just put these down here. So I can just get these out of the way. Bowser's a very completely designed boss. He's a very good, well done final boss. He's not as well done and well designed as the Shadow Queen, which we'll talk about later. But he is very well designed for a final boss. Like he's not S tier. Like he has various gimmicks. He has the ability to make himself invincible every couple turns with the Star Rod. They have to actually waste a turn to basically use up an ability to turn that invincibility off. But if you know when the invincibility is coming, you can kind of set up on him. He does one of his moves. He basically stomps on you and gets rid of the ability, either your jumping, your hammer, or your item, which is actually very, very dangerous. He does it more oftenly in his boss fight in Thousand Year Door. But overall, he's a very, very well designed boss. I just think he doesn't really get his much due, mainly because, Shadow Queen is just simply a more memorable final boss than Bowser. Not to mention his boss fight in Thousand Year Door is just simply better overall, because it's more threatening and more fun to fight. But we won't go over that when we get there. So, now we're at Thousand Year Door. We got the Blooper first. Blooper is a D tier. He's just basically a worse version of the Bloopers from Paper Mario 64. He's really just there to just be there. He is mildly threatening unless you know what to do. Then he just becomes a complete pushover. You do have to fight his tentacles first, which is just... Why? It's just weird. He's really just there. I'm not gonna count the red bones and dark bones. So I'm gonna count. No, I'm gonna count the dark bones. No, I'm gonna count them. I'm gonna count them. I'm gonna count them. He's really just there. Red bones. He's a joke. He does revive himself and spawn more enemies, but he's just super easy because the dull bones only have like 1 HP and they don't respawn. He's just a mild inconvenience overall. Once we got the Dark Bones out of the way, Dark Bones is actually more threatening. 20 HP, 2 defense. He does a lot of attack, and he can spawn Dry Bones, which are more threatening because Dry Bones are basically have HP, have 1 defense, can do some serious damage, and can also constantly respawn themselves. So, Dark Bones are just simply more threatening. Then we have Hooktail. Hooktail is interesting. You basically have 2 ways to fight Hooktail. You either use the cricket noise badge, or you don't. I do like that that you can either try hard by not using the badge, which means Hooktail actually becomes a very difficult boss because Hooktail has 20 HP. I think 3 attack, which is very dangerous in the first major boss and a defense point. So if you're looking for a challenge, you want to be masochistic, go fight Hooktail without the badge because you will get your ass whooped. I actually died my first. It took me doing that to actually die to Hooktail because I wasn't expecting Hooktail to be that difficult. Especially since at the time I didn't really know how the command blocks worked, or even the super guard. And the super guard is really, really hard to do, but overall, I give Hooktail a solid C. Hello. Okay. Sorry, something happened. Right, I'm back. So, yeah, Hooktail is a really competently designed boss. Honestly, what you're going to see for a lot of the major bosses is they're really well designed. Like, they're The Blue 64 is designed well to watch. I'm actually going to bump the Lantern Ghost up to see. Hooktail's a really good design boss. So let's just get the Atomic Boo out of the way. This is just a thing that exists. Like, when I first played the game, I didn't even know it was an optional boss. Like, it took until literally reading, watching the credits and finding out that there was an Atomic Boo boss that made me realize, wait, there's a Boo boss? And I could never find it, and then I quickly realized, like, wait a minute, is it the creepy staple? Like, and I kind of got humiliated. It's a thing that exists. Like, it's 40 HP, no defense. Like, you get the Feeling Fine badge, which is actually a really good badge, but it's just Atomic Boo is just below average in design. Then we have the Shadow. I'm actually just gonna do both Shadow Siren bosses right away. No, wait. No, you know what? I'm gonna do the Siren bosses separately because they both have different designs of everything. Because they're both, not only are they buffed, but they have like completely different mindsets and stuff like that. The first Shadow Siren boss, where you fight Beldum, Marilyn, and Vivian, is a D. They're okay. They're meant to basically kind of pad out to kind of show you how the dynamics of the Shadow Sirens are. But outside of that, they're pretty pathetic. They're just... Vivian has 10 HP, Beldum has 12 HP, and Marilyn has 15 HP. They are mildly threatening if you let Marilyn and Beldum alive. Like, Vivian's weak, but that makes sense considering the fact, well, Vivian you get later in the game and you make her way stronger. Not to mention, she's kind of down in the dumps, so, you know, she probably wasn't even trying. The Palace's Shadow Sirens are B rank. Switching Vivian for Dupless is very crazy. Not to mention, there is a lot of build-up in terms of Vivian's character for these fight, because you get some extra dialogue if you specifically have Vivian out for when you fight them. Like there's some extra dialogue that basically just kind of gives a feather in the cap of Vivian's character arc. And also, when you beat them, and there's a little detail that not a lot of people know, where if you actually talk to them after they beat it, because they actually just stay there in that room, and if you talk to them with any other character besides Vivian, they'll just trash talk them. But if you talk to them as Vivian, she'll just look at them and apologize. And it's actually a really good showcase of her character in that one moment where even after she beat him, she's still saying sorry. She's still staying true to her character. And she wants them to be better people. And it's kind of morose. But overall, they're both designed well. We'll talk more about Dupless by himself a little bit later. But the Palace of Shadow Sirens are just simply a better design than this, because they have much more stuff they can do. They can give them buffs themselves up with status, debuff Mario. Marilyn can charge, can do a lot of attacks, can electrify herself. Dupless can copy your partners and Mario. There's a lot you can do, and they all have 40 HP. Overall, pretty well done boss. Magnus Von Grapple, the tissue paper robot. This is another C. I don't have a problem with Magnus Von Grapple. He's just, for the most part, he's just entirely forgettable, because Magnus Von Grapple 2.0 is just an immensely better designed boss than Magnus Von Grapple. It's basically like you take Magnus Von Grapple, pick up his only real flaw being that he's just really easy to guard against, which is really the worst I can say about Magnus Von Grapple is the fact that 2.0 exists, and 2.0 is just immensely better. It's immensely more dangerous. Von Grapple has about 30 HP, and he has a defense point, and he can fire his hands. They become enemies. He can stop you and get rid of a status and get rid of a command. But at that time, you have Flurry, which just completely curb stops him. It's pretty much Flurry that makes Magnus Von Grapple not really that threatening, because Flurry can just do so much, and it's just crazy. Next up, we have Ruckhawk. Rawhawk's a D. I'm actually going to talk about Grubba last. Like, I'm really going to talk about Grubba last because there's just so much to talk about with Grubba. But with Rawhawk, I love Rawhawk. I love his character. He's basically just a bird version of Hulk Hogan. Come on, I'm a big wrestling fan at heart. So, of course, once we got a character that's just basically just bird Hulk Hogan. Even in, like, Spanish areas, his name is literally Hawk Hogan, to basically just hammer that reference down. He's basically like a typical wrestler. Like, he showboats, he basically acts like your stereotypical heel. You know, like when he barges into the major room, he says, "Dudley guy coming through," with the belt. Like, he just really, really rubs you the wrong way, but you love him for that. He's just an awesome character. Too bad that he's just way too easy. And the biggest shame is when you can actually go back to Glitzville and fight him again, but his stats aren't increased. Like, that would have been a really cool thing because you do get a message from him later in the game that said he's been training and become stronger, to imply that, you know, he's going to become a super boss, but he doesn't. His stats don't increase. It just would have been actually been pretty. If Rawhawk was given the super boss treatment, he would have been S tier. Simply because the S tier rank probably would have been just frankly amazing. But as it stands, Rawhawk gets the D tier. He's a good character. I just really wish his boss fight was better because his boss fight is just really pathetic. But yeah, so now we're moving on to Dupless. Dupless is the only exception. I love the build up to Dupless of him just being a complete asshole, just trolling people and turning them into bigs because he can. But and I love the immense twist once you actually beat him. And you get that twist where he takes your identity. But outside of that, he's just so easy. He only has one move, he turns into Mario, and then he doesn't really do much besides just common hammering and jumping. Like, if he did stuff like some of the badges, like, there's a lot you could have done. The developers could have done with Dupless. Like, he would copy whatever badges Mario has equipped. So, like, if you have a defense up badge, he would have a +1 in defense. Like, if you had a power jump, he would do a power jump. That would have been just an amazing twist. That would have been just like Rawhawk. If they did that, he would have been jumped up to S. But it's even worse in his second boss fight because he literally just does nothing. Like, when you fight him as Mario, you and Vivian against him and your other partners, the other partners are just more threatening because they actually do the other moves. Like, they will do their other moves. Like, they will power bonk if they have it. They will do, like, power slam, dodgy fog if you allow Flurry to do it. They will just simply do all of that, and that just makes it a more interesting boss. But it doesn't save Dupless himself from being just a very, very poor off boss for Chapter 4. Not to mention, combined with the tedious slog Chapter 4 is, like, no one really likes Chapter 4. It's really badly designed. I didn't like it. But yeah, so there's that. So next up, we have Cortez. Cortez gets a B. I love Cortez. Really, the only thing is he just has way too little HP. He has 3 phases. He has his phase where he can attack up to 4 times with the swords, and then you beat him. And then he gets, like, a charge move where he basically buffs himself out, buffs his stats, like increasing his attack and defense, and can do a lot of hurt. And then you beat him that time, and then he just turns into a floating head with the weapons, and then it becomes a gang fight. The thing is, he has 20 HP for all 3 phases. He technically has 4 phases because he does absorb the HP from your audience after a certain point in this final part. But other than that, he's just not difficult enough because they designed him to have so little HP for each phase that it just makes it completely irrelevant. Not to mention his second phase where he basically just has the gem in his stomach and his chest and stuff like that. he's just really pathetically easy to beat. Like, it's just, he's a pushover. Lord Crump, another B. I love the setup of this boss fight where you basically beat Cortez. Lord Crump attacking the little Kiyohaki settlement. Excuse me. Then you have to actually get Flavio to negotiate with Cortez. And basically Cortez says, "All right, amigo." Literally sets his ship attacking Crump, and then you're fighting him in the middle of naval warfare. That's actually a pretty good. And he's not even a bad boss. He has 60 HP total. He had 30 HP, but he constantly gets like troops to help him out. So it's like he's not really that threatening, but just the setup and the build up to everything is just frankly pretty dang good. Like I just love the setting of this boss fight. He's not really that hard. He doesn't have that much attack points, no defense points. But yeah, he technically always has attacks twice and stuff like that. But overall, pretty well designed boss. Let's see. Then we got the Smorg. Smorg in the S tier. I love the Smorg. Honestly, Smorg is probably my favorite boss in Thousand Year Door. Even more than the Shadow Queen. Even more than Grubba. I love, just like Lord Crump, the Smorg has a phenomenal setting for how you fight him. So basically, how the Smorg comes around is you wake up on the third day of the Express. You find out that, like, no one's around, and then you go find the conductor. Conductor's like, wait, why isn't no one's around? And then the Smorgs completely cover the train. So you gotta actually find all the people, they actually flood in through the back of the train. You free some people, and then you actually fight the Smorg on the top of the train with the passengers still in its grasp. It's a completely intense fight. Not to mention, Smorg probably has my favorite theme of the boss fights in Thousand Year Door. I love the Smorg theme. It's probably one of my favorite video game tracks of all time. The setting is amazing. The boss fight is amazing. He has multiple attacks. He has multiple ways to attack you. He feels more at home in the Mario and Luigi game, to be honest, because in order to actually damage him, you got to actually get rid of the tentacles that are in him that he's using to expose the core and then damage the core. It doesn't really have. Really, the worst part is it doesn't really have a lot of HP. It only has 50 HP, but that's because you got to go through a lot of hoops just to be able to damage it. It's a really intense boss fight. I think this is the only boss fight I still have trouble with because of how tough it is to time the Smorg's attacks. It's a really legitimately intense boss fight. And I just love fighting him. So when I first played the game, I actually made a separate profile of just so I can fight this thing over and over again because this thing was just so much fun to fight. And it's just a really entertaining boss, and it deserves his S rank. Magnus Von Grapple 2. S rank 2. I love everything about this. Like I said, everything about the Magnus Von Grapple fight is completely done better by the point 2. More attack, more defense, more HP. He has 70 HP. More attacks. He has the spiny thing, but they explode when they attack. What's that? He can stomp you. He can also basically take a gigantic gun and fire the audience members at you, which is pretty dang hilarious. Not to mention the audience thing, I think is one of the very few unblockable moves in the actual game. So it's actually pretty hard. So you gotta actually defend against it, which you don't know when it's gonna happen. He'll just do it. Just do it. Overall, really intense boss fight. I love the setting. I love the fact that he's basically like at his last chance of and he knows he's gonna kind of goof up on it. But he's not gonna give up, and that's it. Gloomtail. And I'm gonna put Bonetail here too. Like all three dragons are really just there. Like you won't even realize that the fact that there's two dragons unless you specifically look for Grifty in Rootport and get the lore drop on these two. Gloomtail is basically just like Bonetail, just without the weakness, because Gloomtail has about 70 HP, 1 defense, same attacks as Hooktail. That's pretty much why I'm putting in all 3, because they all pretty much have the same attacks. It's just the attacks are just really hard to actually block and super guard and stuff like that. And they're really much just damage tanks. They just don't do a lot to differentiate themselves. Like, okay, Gloomtail can poison you and charge you, but so can Bonetail. But Bonetail can heal himself. There's just nothing to differentiate itself from them. So yeah, Grotus is A rank. I really think they built Grotus up to be a really phenomenal boss. I don't like the gimmick of his boss fight. So basically, every turn on his boss fight, he would always summon 2 guards to basically increase his defense. So his defense is constantly always changing, always making it very hard to figure out what to use at a given time. If you have a lot of flower points, you can just easily spam fiery drinks and stuff like that. Basically, do a lot of damage. And he's not really, and he can constantly status himself, status you. He can do damage. His options actually attack you. There's a lot of moving parts to the Grotus fight. He has 60 HP, which is kind of a bummer, which kind of makes sense because immediately after you gotta fight Bowser and Cammy. Bowser and Cammy get an A rank too. I'm gonna move Grotus to S rank. There's so much storyline behind him that it would be bereft to kind of put him anywhere below S rank. He just built up that magnificently that you never really would suspected that the Shadow Queen, you have to fight the Shadow Queen afterwards. And what kind of shows to tell you how well done he was as a character and as a villain. There's just a lot of moving parts. There's no real way to fight him. Like, he has no real way to counter him because of his defense constantly changing. Every fight is threatening. Almost as threatening as this Smorg boss, honestly. And then afterwards, after you beat him, you fight Cammy and Bowser. Honestly, the only reason they're this high is because you fight them directly after Grotus. Like, really? Like, you fight a very hard boss in Grotus, and immediately after you fight Cammy and Bowser. So unless you specifically level up after beating Grotus, you're probably going to get beat up by Cammy and Bowser. I love the idea of finally fighting Cammy. She does do a lot of stuff. She heals Bowser, gives him status buffs, heals herself, can do a lot of stuff. Doesn't do as much stuff as Grotus. Not to mention the beginning of the fight being like completely fourth wall breaking. It's like, aha! What's a finale without a Bowser fight? A credit finale, that's what! And, it's an entertaining fight. Like, I wouldn't say it's as good as Grotus design-wise, because it's very basic compared to Grotus. But, that's fine. The Shadow Queen, another S rank. The Shadow Queen is just everything about the Shadow Queen. The build, the suspense, the fact that when she wakes up, literally the entire world gets plunged in the shadow. All the small details of everyone freaking out. Possessing Peach, just having a whole bunch of HP. She has 150 HP. When you get past a certain point in the first phase, she completely heals herself. You can actually glitch that in it to actually make sure that doesn't happen. That's actually how I beat her the first time. I actually had to glitch this boss fight unintentionally, I might add, to actually be able to beat her. Like, that's kind of saying something that I had to do that to beat her the first time. But yeah, she has way too many attacks. She has way too many attacks. She can status you, poison you, set you on fire. Her attacks constantly heal her if they land. It's just a really, really well designed boss that has a lot of emotional impact. And Shadow Queen is just a phenomenal villain, like, in the sense of ambiguity. But yeah, so there's one boss left. Grubba. Now, I wanted to save Grubba for last because there's a lot to talk about with Grubba. Because on paper, he's the boss of Glitzville. 60 HP. His attack and defense are actually variable. but he spent a lot of time constantly buffing himself, debuffing himself, giving him more extra turns, and constantly statusing himself. So that gives him a lot of free turns to just wail on him. And so you think, oh, he's F rank. Until you realize what Glitzville is about. Because Glitzville is basically just one gigantic wrestling reference. And Grubba is basically meant to... basically is a perfect boss when it comes to thematic consistencies of Glitz and Glory. Because, yeah, he's constantly buffing himself, and he barely attacks, but he's constantly showboating, which is what a wrestler does. He kind of slows things down to a point by constantly buffing himself. That's what a heel does. He's a heel boss. So while design-wise, he doesn't really offer anything, because if it was just on the design-wise, he'd be F tier. Just the thematic consistency of being a wrestler, he actually congratulates you on beating him because he still sees it as a show. And just so many thematic consistencies throughout of Glitz and Glory, it shoots him all the way to an S rank. Especially if you can actually challenge yourself by not using flower points, and like if you go like challenge mode, like you don't use special ability or badges, he becomes immensely difficult because you just half the time you can't actually do damage on him because he'll just buff himself up so much that you just simply can't pierce through his defense until it powers down. So basically, Grubba is basically like Dupless, where you can just you can actually challenge him and make him like immensely harder. It's basically what I wanted Dupless to be. Like, you want to challenge yourself, you fight Grubba without the flower points. The build-up to him is actually phenomenal of just a swerve. It's like, oh, he's the bad guy the entire time. Ha-ha! And he's just a really, really fun boss. He's just immensely hilarious. He's immensely hilarious, very thematic to Glitzville, being like a sort of Vince McMahon-esque parody of just being a showboat. Constantly, like, if you watch any video of like Glitz and Glory, you'll see like this guy appears everywhere. This guy just appears everywhere. He trash talks you. He trash talks the antagonist. He basically calls Mario Great Gonzalez. He's just an overall complete package. Like, if I wanted to, I would put him like S+ and put him just above them. Because again, he's not really difficult by himself, but what he brings in the context of the chapter he appears in just raises his stature immensely. Because he's the only villain who has a thematic consistently to the chapter you're actually playing in that actually embodies that theme perfectly, i.e. professional wrestling. And he becomes immensely fun. So yeah, that's the, you know what? No, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Dips. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. He gets SS. He's just that fun a character. That fun a boss if you want to challenge yourself. Because if you let him challenge yourself and you don't know how to dodge, he will literally one-shot you. He can literally 1-2-shot you. But that's if you want him to. So just that flexibility of just him, if you want to challenge yourself, you can. And the thematic consistencies he brings to the table just makes him an immensely more better boss than even the Shadow Queen and all the other ones combined. But yeah, that's my tier list of the bosses. Tell me what you think. I will see you next time. And cut.